The Puck Portfolio with Andy McNeil.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. It's Tuesday, December 17th. I'm your host, Andy McNeil, joined, as always, by Daily Faceoff's own Nick Martin. Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I had a tough betting night last night, but what can you do? Other than that, things are great. Caps finally let me down and let you down as well. I was a little worried about that, but at the end of the day, I was like, there's been a lot of these games where I feel like maybe it's the one, and they kept being like plus 135, plus 150, so it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't feel too bad about that one. I thought they put up a pretty good fight. Close overall for a plus 135, plus 140 underdog, and they did have the lead for a bit, but just couldn't hold on, and the scoring just wasn't there like it has been in a lot of other games. So that was the first game in 10 or 9 that they didn't register at least or get at least a point out of a game.
Yeah, and the first game of the power plays looked anything like that, so those happened. But yeah, that was definitely surprising that the power play looked that horrible. Stars obviously did a really good job, but I think that was a huge part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't too concerned about that Dallas or that Caps loss because thankfully Zach Hyman lit the lamp pretty early in last night's game. Then did it again before he took a Evan Bouchard slap shot to the face. So he got 2 just for good measure. But Hyman plus 210 cashing the anytime goal prop. So it was a profitable night. I made a little over a unit there. But yeah, I did wish I could take that Caps back bet at the end of the day. But that Oilers game had it all, pretty much everything you could want, I guess, unless you're an Oilers fan, because the Florida Panthers did end up winning the game. But back and forth, numerous lead changes, a ton of good hits, a ton of bad hits, lots going on in that game. Pretty entertaining for a Monday night meeting between the Panthers and the Oilers. What else did you take away from Monday night, Nick? Anything?
Yeah, not too much. I was on the Oilers, so obviously I hated the way that finished. But these prime games, the broadcasts are pretty good. And somehow, I mean, that game obviously I think was always going to have a little extra juice. But it does feel like the Monday night prime games continue to actually be pretty good for whatever reason. I feel like every time I tune in, I've been happy. I don't know if the players are actually a little more up for it. We talk about in football all the time, these night slates, these primetime games. People have all their different stats, and I seem to kind of believe the players are actually a little different, a little more up for them. But yeah, I do feel like the Amazon Prime broadcasts have been good and featured a lot of good games. So definitely recommend tuning into those.
They've got to spend a little money on the set though, because they've just got Advenberg, Mark Messier, and the other young lady sitting in a table that's too small for 3 people, and it looks kind of weird on TV. Big organization like Amazon can't spring for a better set. Come on.
I always have like 3 screens going on numerous games, so once one hits intermission, typically I'm switching over to something.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned last week, we have a new podcast feed here on the Puck Portfolio. I tweeted out a link this morning. So one way to know if you're on the right feed is at the top. It'll say important announcement. Is that right, Jake? All right, yeah. So you'll see at the top episode, it'll say important announcement, and that's just Nick telling everybody the goings on of the new podcast feed and letting everybody in on the details. So if you check your podcast feed and you see that at the top, then you know you're on the right one. But of course, thank you all for making the jump over. I know it's a bit of a hassle, but it definitely will help out in the long run in terms of growing this show. So yeah, let's get into to Thursday's big slate. Nick, I'm gonna let you start. What game do you want to start with here?
Let's start with Columbus versus Tampa. Keep it in order. I have 2 plays on this game. I'm hoping it'll be pretty high event, fun matchup. So yeah, let's get into that one.
All right, let's do it. What do you like there?
I like the game total to go over 6.5. So My thoughts here, Columbus continues to struggle defensively. They've been pretty break even. And Jet Greaves is the confirmed starter. He's actually been slightly better than Tarasov and Merzlikins so far this year. But I mean, still obviously very unproven. 902 save percentage in 14 AHL games this season. So I'm not really worried that Jet Greaves is just going to, steal this one for the Lightning. I think the Lightning obviously have a very high projected total. But I do think that the Columbus Blue Jackets offensively continue to look pretty respectable. So I think we've got the good chance of getting over 6.5 here. Obviously, maybe we could get it like we got that Sharks one last week with the Lightning 8-1 or whatever it was in the end. Or
we'll
I
take
think
that, right?
we would love that, especially given my other prop. Or, obviously I think 5-3 or something like that is very reasonable. And then the other bet that I do like, and it is as high as plus 180, is Braden Point to record 2 points in this matchup. I think that it kind of continues to fly under the radar just how good he's been.
Totally, yeah.
Lineup. He leads the NHL. He's tied with Draisaitl with 23 points since November 19th when he got back into the lineup. So 1.92 points per game. And I continue to think he just looks every bit as good as Kucherov. Like he has been downright excellent. It's been a lot more than just him riding the coattails of Kucherov, but he is in obviously the best spots you can really be in. I think everyone kind of thought that Gensel Point Kucherov line would be one of the very best in the league entering the season, and it has been of late. And then also the Lightning's power play is first in the league since Point got back in the lineup, 41.2% success rate. So I think there's a lot to like about this. Point's been racking up the numbers. He's hit 2 points in 6 of the last 12 games. So obviously when you're talking plus 180, that's a really good hit rate. And this is a way better than average matchup. So I think there's definitely some value backing Point to stay hot. Wouldn't hate just playing him to score a goal either, but I settled on 2 points as my favorite prop of his.
Yeah, totally. I can see it. And I agree with you that it doesn't seem the market has really caught up to just how good Braden Point is playing. And like I said on an earlier show, I think last week sometime we talked about Point and just about, how he's been scoring at a ridiculous pace and leading the league in goals per game, et cetera. But, his shooting percentage is typically pretty high. It's 20+%, right? So I don't think he's going to, come crashing back down to earth or anything like that. I doubt he's going to score at a 30+% rate for a very long stretch, but can definitely see this guy, lighting the lamp on 20+% of his shots going forward, and that wouldn't be surprising. So,
he doesn't take bad shots. He's pretty damn smart. If you watch him probably for 5 games, you might not see him take one shot that didn't really have any purpose to it. So there's been a lot of talk about how the league save percentage is down, and I think you look at some of these top forwards like Point, it does seem like they're more or less never opting to just pour shots on the net that have no chance.
Yeah, absolutely. The game I want to focus on, the early game that I want to focus on, to be honest, I don't love today's slate, and I've been feeling a little bit under the weather. That's why I'm layered up here because I kind of can't get warm today for some reason. But now I'm kind of feeling a little bit too hot, if I'm being honest. But we'll make it. But the game I want to zero in on here is the Buffalo Sabres in Montreal taking on the Canadiens. Of course, Buffalo reeling after their 10th straight loss in Toronto on Sunday. But the betting market still favors the Sabres here over the Canadiens, at least slightly. They just sit 1 point ahead of Montreal right now in the standings. They won 4 of the last 5 trips to Montreal, but some of those are, a couple of years back, right? And they've actually lost 5 of their last 8 meetings against the Canadiens. So I don't know if I'm super confident in Buffalo winning this game. It's not like they're that strong on the road either. The Sabres are just 5-7 straight up away from home this season. Over the last 10 games that during this losing stretch, Buffalo ranks 30th in goals scored, 31st in goals against per 60 minutes. They also sit 26th in even strength expected goals percentage, and only 4 teams have allowed more even strength shots or shot attempts per 60 minutes. So lots going wrong here for the Sabres. Special teams is another one. Their power play was never very good to begin with. It was only converting at about a 15% clip, on the season. over the last 10 games, they've only been successful about 7 or 8% of the time on the power play. Their penalty kill is also around among the bottom 10 teams in the league over the last 10 games. So lots going wrong here. And, I don't think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has been bad necessarily, but he's just definitely been more susceptible to have some bad starts and to play poorly over this recent stretch here. So not the best current form. I thought the comments from head coach Lindy Ruff were a little peculiar, I guess. A guy that's been around for as long as he has. He seems to think this is a pretty dire situation here, and he went as far as to say it's the toughest solve of his 24-year coaching career. So I think that says a lot about just what the Sabres have. They know they have talent, but right now it's just they're not able to put it together and win hockey games. I think defeating Montreal is probably a realistic ask here. But yeah, I wouldn't back the Sabres. Not really backing the Canadians here, but I am going to zero in on a couple of player props, and both involve Nick Suzuki. So I like Suzuki as an anytime goal scorer at plus 250. Obviously, the Sabres are having issues on defense and in goal. So I think that this is a good matchup for Suzuki. He's actually, he's not generating as many shots as Patrick Laine or Cole Caulfield, but he is generating as many expected goals on a per 60-minute basis, roughly. And he's scoring as many goals as Caulfield over the last 10, 15 games, right? So I think the plus 250 odds on Suzuki to get an anytime goal against a team like Buffalo, who's, defensively is in terrible form right now, is a pretty good luck. And I also I think this is, obviously correlated with the anytime goal bet. But I like him to get 3+ shots on goal. So you can go over 1.5 at minus 200. You can go 2+ shots on goal at minus 110 at Bet Victor. But you can bet 3+ shots on goal at Bet 365 at plus 160. And I think that's a really good look. He's registered 3+ shots in 7 out of his last 10 games versus Buffalo. So they're, a below average opponent. So he's not a guy that shoots the puck a lot, but this should be a game where we see him, maybe get a few more attempts and therefore get a few more shots on goal. So I'm going to go with over 3+ shots at plus 160. But like I said, I do like 2+ shots on goal at minus 111. But I think it's just a good game to take the chance here on 3+ and also take the chance on him scoring an anytime goal. Any thoughts on the Sabres or the Canadians heading into this one, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ruff's comments are interesting. I thought he was a horrible hire entering the year.
Yeah.
And I do think he's been part of the problem. And I mean, you look at the Devils last year, that team, they had some bad injuries, but even when they were healthy, they weren't playing as anyone expected. And now Keefe takes over. All of a sudden, they look excellent once again. So I do think that Ruff is probably a little dated, a little past being a good coach in this season or in this league. So I'm not going to pin it all on Ruff, but I also think he's probably not wearing as much blame as he would if the Sabres, didn't enter the year having lost or having not made the playoffs so many seasons in a row.
Yeah.
I do kind of think the Sabres find a way to end the streak tonight, but I'm not going to back it. I feel like the number's just not quite there. I did bet them to beat Toronto on Sunday, so that loss, how quickly that went from 3-1 to losing and hopeless is just sitting in my mind. But I mean, the case for them, I can at least see why they're favored here. They do still, one of the teams that is below them in expected goals in the span you gave out is the Canadians, that is allowing more shots against as well. And Buffalo has been absolutely horrible in close games in that spot. There's been a lot that you could, make a case that maybe they should have won. But I also feel like that's leaked into their head now. And it kind of just seems like a full-blown disaster. So I don't really want to touch them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's cases to be made for both sides here. I mean, Montreal shows up better in some categories than Buffalo, but at least recently. But obviously, the Canadians really struggling. They suffered that 9-2 loss to the Penguins, the 4-2 loss to the Jets. And if you go back a lot, they've opened the scoring in a lot of games lately as well, and have not been able to keep that going. But I think there's going to be some desperation here with the Canadians tonight because They do have a chance to kind of get back on the right track over the next 3 games. They're going to play Buffalo and the Detroit Red Wings twice in a home and home here. But they are playing 10 of their next 14 games on the road. So this could be a really, really tough stretch for Montreal. And, by the middle of January, I think we could see this team at the bottom of far down at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings with a bit of separation between them and everybody else. But we'll see. Maybe they'll surprise, but they're going to play some pretty tough opponents heading into the new year and into January. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare over these next 3 games against, I guess I would say, beatable opponents in the Sabres and the Red Wings. But yeah, just the only looks I like for this game right now: Suzuki anytime goal plus 250, and Suzuki 3+ shots on goal at plus 160. Nick, you want to keep going in order here? What's next on your list?
I think that'd be going pretty far down the slate for me. Yeah, I have just a pick left on the Jets Sharks game, so I'm happy to throw
Okay,
it.
so I'm up next then. Well, I like the Boston Bruins and the Calgary Flames to go over 5.5 goals. If you shop around, you can get this one at even money. At worst, I think you shouldn't have to pay any more than minus 105 if you're able to shop around. There are some shops that are offering that, but 8 of the last 11 games for Calgary have featured at least 6 goals. I think 7 out of the last 9 for Boston have featured at least 6 goals. Calgary's right down there with Buffalo lately in terms of their defensive metrics. And I know Dustin Wolf was coming off that shutout win over the Florida Panthers, who were shut out in back-to-back games before last night's game in Edmonton, surprisingly. He allowed 14 goals in his 3 previous starts. So I'm not exactly scared off by that shutout performance against the Panthers here. The Bruins have obviously been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde, but I think the Flames are a team that they can handle. And Calgary, should be able to, somewhat take advantage of Boston's defensive liabilities, because there are some, that's for sure, and that's been pretty evident over the last few games. But I think this is a really reasonable price here. I don't have a ton of analysis on this one. It just projects to be a higher scoring game than 5.5 on average, and therefore I like over 5.5. Let's say minus 110 or better. But you shouldn't have to pay that kind of price. You should be able to get minus 105 or even money on Boston Calgary over 5.5. So what do you like in the Sharks and the Jets game, Nick?
Yeah, I like, and I should say I like your Bruins Flames look there too. It feels like there's been a couple of these Bruins games where they're still being priced like one of the lowest event teams in the league. But early on, they were really struggling to score on any of their chances. And they're just like Swayman, whoever it is, whether in Corpusal has come down to earth a little bit too. Their goaltending is not quite as convincing as it was. And the Flames also, since their offense has kind of bounced back a little bit after that horrid franchise-long streak of not scoring 4 goals, feels like they're kind of finding it, have a little more confidence in that area. And I do think they don't have any high, like elite offensive talents by any means, but I do think they have a few more depth guys with some scoring upside than other teams. So I don't know if they'll be like a league worst offense. So I do like that one as well with the low total of 5.5. Yeah. And in the Jets Sharks game, I like chalky one with Cal Connor to go over 3.5 shots at plus 105. I think it's a pretty good look right now because it sets up as a pretty ideal matchup. The Sharks have been playing really high event hockey. They're at 6-7-2 over their last 15, which has made them a very profitable bet because of the way that they continue to be priced in the market. Yeah. And it's really been that their offensive upside has been raised considerably. And if you look at the analytics, they're still allowing the 3rd most shots against in that span. So they're giving up a ton. But they are generating a lot of goals. So that kind of game script would be good here, just a high-flying matchup where maybe the Sharks keep it slightly close. And the Jets have been struggling. In the same span, they're 7-7-1. And their expected goal share is sitting at about 45%. So it's not like this is a matchup where I think the Jets, as a huge favorite, are just going to run away with it. I think there's a pretty good chance we'll need to see a strong performance from their top line, which has been really good. So I think it just sets up as a pretty ideal spot. Connor's gone over 3.5 in 3 of his last 4. And I feel like obviously this is always a popular prop. He hit it versus Montreal, and I played it. And I think it's just the same thing. The number looks a little too long in this spot versus a Sharks team that can't defend, but can definitely keep games close. And I think the other thing to like too is I think the Jets are just part of the flaw for them recently has been not having Ehlers in the lineup. And I do think that always makes it a little more likely that we'll see heavy usage for Connor's line. So, yeah, I think all in all versus the Sharks defense that has been really bad, this number is just a little too long.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I just had to read Don Luszczyszyn's statement because of apparently appearing on friend of the show, Don Luszczyszyn, apparently appeared on the What Chaos podcast with DJ Bean, Pete Blackbird, and Tony D'Angelo, which apparently has caused some backlash. I'll have to investigate this later, but yeah, big news in the hockey world, I guess.
Yeah,
I was oblivious to this, but somebody texted me yesterday and said you should do a podcast with Tony D'Angelo, and I had no idea what they were referencing. I was like, "What? Why? Why would I do that?"
Yeah, that was. I think some people being a little oversensitive. And anyways, that was crazy. I thought it would have been interesting to hear that debate between those two.
Yeah, I have no idea. I guess I try to, only focus on the important stuff when it comes to the NHL, which means kind of blocking out a lot that's going on Twitter. I mean, big weekend in Canadian politics. I didn't even know anything that was going on, which shows how out of the loop I am on all things news, both hockey and otherwise. Because with betting, I mean, it just takes up so much of your time, right? And yeah, but I guess I'll have some reading to do later because it seems.
I think you'll live without all that stuff in your head.
Yeah, I'll be all right. Obviously a busy week here, Nick. Yesterday I wrote the schedule breakdown, the weekly schedule breakdown. We added in Monday, the 23rd, since it's the last day. Usually we go Monday to Sunday, but I thought, well, there's only one day before the holiday break. It's the 23rd, and there's going to be a lot of action that day. But we've got a busy week coming up here in the NHL. It's going to be a busy weekend before the holiday break, and I think it's going to be more imperative than ever, probably, to stay on top of the schedule, stay on top of injuries, goaltending, usage, all that stuff, because pretty much every team has a pretty condensed schedule here in the last week before this holiday break. If you look at Monday's schedule, I'm pretty sure every single team is playing in some sort of situation, whether it be a back-to-back game, 3 and 4 nights, 4 and 6 nights, etc. So there's going to be a lot of tired teams playing hockey this weekend and into next week before we get to the holiday break. Some news coming out of Minnesota. Looks like Philip Gustafson is going to miss his second straight game. Marc-Andre Fleury will be starting versus the Florida Panthers on Wednesday. And I'm kind of curious to see what we have here opening up.
Yeah, I like I already posted the Panthers. I like.
Oh, you did? Did you?
120. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good spot.
Wow. North Star bets -111 right now on the Florida Panthers. Some sports books like FanDuel have moved up to -138. But yeah, Bet Rivers North Star bets sitting at -111 right now. Which is obviously the best price in market.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to hold. I would for sure play that.
That'll be gone in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's probably moving right now as we speak because I just told everybody about it.
But, yeah, like if you look at the Wild, they've played the 8th easiest schedule. The Panthers played the 5th hardest schedule. The Wild have had some of their guys out of lineup lately, but they're below 50% expected goals over the last 10. They've played 3 playoff teams in that span. They've lost every one of those games with a -7 goal differential. So I like the Wild. I've been high on them all year, but I do think this is definitely a high watermark. And the Panthers are kind of the opposite. Their underlying results are better than you would expect given their recent record. Part of the problem has been Bobrovsky's been pretty average. But I think right now this is just somewhat of a high watermark for the Wild. I think it's pretty easy to say that the Panthers are still the better team, especially if Fleury's going. So, yeah, I think that's a good number. The other ones, too, I'm kind of still waiting to dive into them, though. But I think the Flyers are definitely undervalued tomorrow at +105 in Detroit. I don't think that'll hold. I would wait off if you were going to bet Detroit or get on the Flyers now if you could. And the other one that I think we'll see some line movement on, the Utah's at minus 105 in Vancouver.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I think that'll move to like minus 130. So keep
Yeah,
that in
I'm going to lock that one in right away here, I think, because, yeah, like you said, I don't think Utah should be a home underdog necessarily against the Canucks. Obviously, I know Vancouver's been a lot better on the road than they have been on home ice, but yeah, I think this is a little bit too generous for a Canucks team that has been more up than down against a Utah team that's been kind of firing on all cylinders lately, right? So
yeah, Utah's been great, and the Canucks have been kind of tough to handicap lately. They've been pretty Jekyll and Hyde as well. They had that like best win of their season over the Panthers on Thursday, and then they played horrific versus your Bruins on Saturday. Were never in that game. And then they bounced back with a win over the Avs last night. So they've been a little Jekyll and Hyde, and they obviously haven't had many games with Demko, Miller, and Besser in the lineup. But yeah, was very surprised to see them open as a slight favorite in that matchup.
listen, I'm the only one that is allowed to criticize the Boston Bruins on this show. Okay.
This year.
Yeah, no, but yeah, Utah's been.
They're gonna make it. It looks like. I bet them miss the playoffs, and I was, feeling pumped. I still don't think it's the worst bet, given it was plus 190, but now it's looking pretty not great. As I look at the teams, I'm gonna need to try and push them out of that spot. Not feeling so hot.
I've got, so just to circle back on Utah, because this is the bet that I'm going to lock in ahead of tomorrow's show. I'm sure we'll find more prior to Wednesday's show, but this is an early bet that I think is worth locking in. I think Utah should be closer to minus 115 here. So a little bit of value, about 10 cents at minus 105. But yeah, looking at over the last month, just scoring rates, second best defensive team in the NHL over the last 13 games. The Utah Hockey Club, 2.35 goals against per 60 minutes. And only 5 teams have scored more goals on a per 60-minute basis during that stretch. So they've got a goal differential on a per 60-minute basis that's better than a full goal right now. So pretty good. I think probably come back down to earth a little bit, given that they are sort of a break-even team when it comes to expected goals and shot attempts and things like that. But yeah, there's something here, and the vibes are good. You can't discount the vibes, right? So. A lot better than they were in Arizona, I think.
For sure. I mean, that was part of the reason I thought they were a good bet to make the playoffs and that they could overachieve even more, was because I do think it got to a point last year where the situation in Arizona was such a nightmare that it made things tougher. And now they've got ownership that's trying to do everything top class. And I do feel like you look at all those tiny advantages that, I mean, really, I think it was only Arizona that was doing some of the things they were doing last year, like some of the reports about, they're staying at hotels further away from the airports. They're not getting the same catering. They don't have all these positions that other NHL teams have. I feel like that does add up when you're competing against 31 other teams that are getting all those edges in their favor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. Let's hope we're right about that, and I think that it'll be a good price at the end of the day. So looking forward to that one. But yeah, just 3 bets for me on this big Tuesday slate, at least as of right now. The over 5.5 at minus 110 or better in Calgary and Boston. And then I've got 2 Nick Suzuki props, anytime goal at plus 250. That's at Sports Interaction. And then, 3 plus shots at plus 160. That's at Bet365. You can also bet 3 plus shots at I believe, North Star. At plus 150. I'll have to double check on that very quickly. Yeah, Nick Suzuki over 2.5 shots on goal plus 150. That's at North Star Bets. So you can get plus 160 or plus 150 on Suzuki to register 3 or more shots on goal. Nick, you want to recap your plays quickly?
Yeah, for sure. I like point to get 2 points at plus 180. I like the over in that game. Still, there's better than plus money is out there still if you shop around. So I think pretty much everywhere's at least even money. So pretty good prices left out there, I'd say. And then I like Kyle Connor to go over 3.5 shots, which I think is at about a consensus plus 105. So again, you should be able to get a pretty good number there wherever you're looking. And then I will note too that I was pretty high based off my posts to our action app yesterday on the Devils. They were at minus 152. They were at minus 165 overnight. You should have been able to lock that in pretty safely right around that. But now they're up at minus 180, minus 185. So I think the value is gone there. But I just thought I'd touch on that since I did post it.
Just wanted to give yourself a little pat on the back for.
Hey, well, if I get these ones where I get closing line value, always end in a shootout loss this year. So
well, I should bet the Devils then.
Play now. 10-30 in games going to shootouts in overtime.
Yeah, that's unbelievably
unlucky. Little positive regression, like at some point. The thing that's making it so painful is like as I dove into it, there's so many where the team I had lost in overtime and won their next overtime. So it's not even like it's just been like you can be like, all right, Nick, well, maybe these teams just suck 3-on-3 or whatever, like maybe whatever. It doesn't seem that way because they always seem to perform the next night. So anyways, it'll turn.
Yeah, it feels like that a lot. I noticed that one with the Chicago Blackhawks who we had against the Islanders last week. Did not get the job done, lost 5-4, but then come back and beat the Islanders 5-3, even though Matt Barzal and Adam Pellich were back in the lineup for the Isles. So, things don't always work the way you would think they would work. So it's unfortunate, but that's hockey. And yeah, overtime can be pretty unforgiving. It can be make or break your season sometimes. So
it can be. It's crazy. I went last year. I did almost the same thing. I was like break even at this time of the year, having horrid overtime results, and I was kind of complaining about that being a baby. And then the rest of the way, I had a good finish, went above 500 in overtime. So I'm really, hoping that maybe the same storyline goes here on these sides.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure if I would look back at my past seasons and my best seasons would be correlated with heavily correlated with my best records in overtime. I would almost bet everything I own on that being the case.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the reality is sides are so marginal in NHL betting that like it is unfortunately going to come down to that a lot. I have said at times too that I would almost just prefer to do draw no bet bets more often, but every sportsbook offers a little extra, like they take a little more juice on draw no bet bets. So I always kind of fall back on the belief like, all right, well, I'm not giving them some juice to like just eliminate this coin flip.
Yeah.
But right now, it's getting
starting to sound like a not too bad of an idea, eh?
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, appreciate another solid day of picks. Thanks for another good show. We will be back on the air on Wednesday. But once again, just want to remind everybody that we are on a new podcast feed right now. So head on over to my Twitter account at Digital Gambler, and you can find the link to get to Spotify or Apple. Or subscribe to both if you want to be really generous. And of course, you've probably already done so on the last feed, but it would really help out. It would takes a few seconds to leave a review. Only a good one. If you have a bad review, don't bother leaving it. We don't need any of those. But if you have a good review and you want to say nice things about us, then please do. It only takes a few seconds. You can 5 stars. Andy and Nick are awesome. Enter, send, whatever. That's easy money, man. All right.
It's gonna be one I wish Nick would stop whining about overtime.
Yeah. We need that. If that's the review you want to leave, that's also fine as well. Because I kind of wish he'd stop whining about overtime too. So you're not alone. But anyways, I was trying to think of something witty to say, but I don't have anything else. I'm all out of witty remarks for today. But that does it for today's episode of the Puck Portfolio. We'll be back on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, breaking down Wednesday's game, maybe looking ahead a little bit to Thursday's big slate, since we'll try to, cover some of that so that we won't have such a heavy load to lift on Thursday. But speaking of that, one last note, we're both on the Utah Hockey Club money line at minus 105 for Thursday. So get to that one while the price is still good, and don't get mad at us tomorrow when you say, hey, it's now minus 125. What the hell?
And Florida. I think Florida's like going to move a lot once we get into it tomorrow. So
for sure. Utah a little more widely available. The movement has already kind of started on Florida, so it might be tough to get down there given that FanDuel's already at -138, etc. So, but yeah, shop around. You maybe find a pretty good price on the Florida Panthers against definitely a lesser goaltender than the Wild usually have in the crease. But yeah, that does it for today's show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Same channel. So we'll see you right here at this time tomorrow.